Hey, welcome, followers of film. We're going to try another episode here. And today's film is a Robert Altman film, one of my favorite directors. I would put him right up there in the top five directors. I love Robert Altman's work. And this one I hadn't seen before. It's a film called Kansas City from 1996. And goes back to it goes back to the Jazz Age. It's set in 1934 in Kansas City. And it's not really a typical Robert Altman film in a way. It's less a comedy, although there might be characters in it who are comedic. Maybe that's one reason why it didn't catch on and didn't rise as a great Robert Altman film, at least within America. But I think it's being reevaluated now. For me, it wasn't up there in the pantheon of great Robert Altman films, but I kind of think maybe it should be.
I think of the ones he does that are sort of ironic and a little wry, those ones, when you're talking about Robert Altman comedy, those are the ones that kind of rise to the top. This one, I would say this had no comedy in it. I think when people are looking for a Robert Altman fix, you can find it in MASH or in McCabe and Mrs. Miller or later on The Player, but this is not one of those.
Right.
And maybe it probably turned people off a little bit, or people just went, oh, in that case, no.
This was a little more of a thinking piece. You had to really look for the richer meaning or the intent behind the tapestry that he wove with the characters as he presented them.
Yeah, it certainly is a tapestry. He the main story is about a character, Blondie. In fact, I heard that the film was originally going to be called Blondie, but then he changed it over to Kansas City. It's a story about a girl and her kind of attempt to get her husband back after his horrible decision to rob a kind of a crime boss or a money runner. But within that little story, Robert Altman just paints all these little pictures of the rest of society, higher, lower, all different places, as a backdrop. And the backdrop contains more information than the story. The story itself is kind of thin, but the backdrop has got all this, relays all of this historical information that was, for me, quite eye-opening, that I enjoyed.
Altman did a great job of reminding us about very modern, very real kind of issues that were relevant in the 90s, absolutely, but also even relevant almost 30 years later, right, today, that were in existence in the 30s. So it's a reminder that more things have changed, the more things have stayed the same.
Yeah, it was just so out in the open. It seemed, the way it's portrayed, it just seems so out in the open. It's kind of mind-boggling that people could get away with that. But Kansas City was a pretty rough and wild town, apparently. And I think Robert Altman grew up in Kansas City. So a lot of the stories he knew firsthand, and he had some connection knowing about some of these characters. And the music, the other portion of the film that I think is so wonderful is the music, because Kansas City was an amazing place for the progression of jazz leading into the big band era. And the film appealed to me because of the jazz connection.
Right.
And there's wonderful music in it.
Yeah, there were a couple of moments in there where, because I read some of the background on the film and stuff, and there are some moments there where I wish they had clarified a lot of that stuff. There was a very brief moment where they kind of, like a throwaway line where they kind of referenced that was Count Basie playing the piano in that bar. And someone said, oh yeah, that piano player is old Bill Basie. Anyway, look at this money. And so I wish they had sort of clarified it a little bit more that, oh my God, this is where these guys got their start.
Like we look back at those musicians with reverence, right? Like how amazing they were. but in that moment, in that era, they were just like, oh, there's that guy, he's really good. But let's focus on what's really important here, which is money, and which is the
Right. I
activity.
agree. I agree. But if you knew more, if you knew more about who we were sort of casually just referencing, that would be, I think that would add more depth, it would add more to your point of these were just guys in a bar.
For me, the jazz was the common thread throughout the entire show, right? It kept coming back to that moment, that scene, and it played behind the back is background for many scenes. So to me, it was either the narrator of the story or it was the main character of the story. When I kind of consider how jazz was utilized in the film, to me, that was the common kind of thread or core. So that's
what is that choir they talk about? You're from plays. Who's the choir in the background?
Greek chorus.
The Greek chorus.
Yeah.
So that was what I thought the jazz was meant to be. Jazz and the creativity of jazz and the nature of jazz made me click into an understanding, or what I think is an understanding of what the intent behind it was for this film. Right. And then how it was telling a greater story about the American experience. And we can get into that in a second.
Well, shall we jump into first frame, last frame?
Oh my God.
Can we handle it? Okay.
I've been practicing all night with my wife, and I've been reading the lines all night long.
First frame.
Last frame.
Wait, well, guys, that is not what the script said. Did I get the rewrites? Ready? First frame. Last
frame.
Well, there's a little bit of improv, but I think we got it.
That's good.
It's fine. It's good.
The first frame is the morning shot in this affluent neighborhood.
Right.
And the last shot is that crime boss, I guess you would call him, seldom seen, counting his money at a table to the band playing jazz, playing Duke Ellington's Solitude.
For me, I look at this and I say structurally, right? Open, expansive, natural, beautiful, dawn, all these wonderful qualities of that first image.
Right.
While the second image is darker and it's heavier and it's starkly lit. And I ask myself, which is the reality of life, right? And I would say the reality is more closer aligned to the second image than the first image. The first image is what we think of is it's the illusion that we like to tell to delude ourselves with, right? Both of these are representing crimes of some sort or criminal kind of activities in some sort. The first is the congressman's house, right? That's what I remember. And if that's not a nod to the fact that government is a criminal enterprise in some way, and then the contrast of that is the actual criminal enterprise, which is more gritty and more dirty, but it's true, more truthful as well.
Yeah. I got the impression that this senator was he was rubbing elbows with the criminals more in a vote getting way. I'm not sure if he himself was into criminal activity. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
I think you're right. I mean, but he was connected to the crime world. He called up people and got things done.
He knew who to go to when he needed help getting his wife back from the woman who wanted to get her husband back from the gangsters.
Right. So an interesting dichotomy of shots, I think, of sort of the acceptable houses and what seemingly look crime free, but within these beautiful homes in this beautiful neighborhood, there are dark stories and people pulling strings in a criminal way
and doing drugs.
And then down there at the bottom, you've got the crime boss, and
it's how builders just slap a coat of paint on something to make it look fresh, right? They don't really worry too much about the structure of the building and the and the rot beneath. It's just slap a fresh coat of paint and make it look good.
Yeah.
But the Crime Boss, this is why I say that the world of the jazz, kind of jazz club, and the things that were going on around it seem to scratch beneath that glossy exterior and get into the reality of the grittiness of life, you know. So that's why I say we sometimes delude ourselves with the first image, while the second image is more closely aligned with what life is for a
Right.
great majority of people.
Right.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit for a few minutes about Robert Altman. He produced and directed the film, and he has made some amazing films. The story that I heard, that this film was financed by a French company, and they approached him and said, "Would you like to make a film for us?" And this was an idea he had on the back burner for years and years. And he said, "Yeah, I've got a film ready. Let's a film about Kansas City." And in the 30s. And they said, "Okay, go for it." And they did it. So this was not financed by an American film, studio. In the list of his greatest films, he has so many films that are right up there in my top 10. We Love Three Women, The Player, Shortcuts, MASH, Nashville. Popeye was a bit of a dud, wasn't it?
I know it's a dud, and I watched it recently, and I went, "Oh yeah, I get it." But when it came, I loved it when it came out. I remember seeing Klaus Vormann was in it, and all little things like that. It was just so great.
Klaus Vormann from the Beatles, the bass
Yeah,
player? I
yeah.
didn't. Oh, that's strange.
He did the music, and he played the conductor of the town band.
One thing Altman says is that all of his films are political. He's a political person. And even in a film that maybe is seemingly doesn't appear political, he always has politics sort of mixed in. He's a politically driven person, I think.
Do you think we've lost that in modern cinema? I mean, we don't really have really political, big name directors of our era, approaching political theater, if you will, political film, right?
Well,
Or film with political elements.
Adam McKay kind of does those every now and then. He did Vice, and he did the one now, just Don't Look Up. I think you could call that political.
Okay,
but that's right.
They went directly to streaming, right? They went to a streaming platform, which is akin to television.
That's true, but just in the way things are now, we have to accept the fact that that's the way movies are going to go. If there wasn't a huge COVID thing going on right now, and movie theaters were closed, those movies certainly would have opened in the movie theater.
Okay. All right.
And you'd have to say Robert Altman is a director who really puts women and women's characters in the forefront of his films, more so than the guys. I mean, the women are the stars of the film, basically, and they're running the whole. You follow their story throughout the film. All these different women, and
they're strong in their own way, right? They're all strong.
Mm-hmm.
They're all capable.
Which is unusual. I mean, most films are male-centered, and women play this sort of subservient, "I'm there for you, honey" kind of role.
Right.
In this movie, I think our way into the movie is through Blondie, and so that automatically makes it sort of women-centric, because all of her friends are going to be women. Anyone she deals with on a personal level, personally connected to, are probably going to be women. So I think the film sort of leans that way to start with.
When there was a scene where Blondie takes the kidnapped lady, Carolyn Stilton, to the movies, and they go and see a Jean Harlow film, Clark Gable, Jean Harlow film. And then later she transforms herself into this kind of vision of Jean Harlow when she dyes her hair, bleaches her hair out. But this was the film that they were seeing, called Hold Your Man.
I was curious about what Jennifer Jason Leigh was doing, what her character was doing, not what she was doing, because you saw a couple of moments in the movie when you saw her. Well, I don't know whether it was Blondie's facade or the actual Blondie, and her Jean Harlow person was the facade, or is that the actual Blondie? Because there was a scene where, or a moment where she's walking through the Union Telegram office, Western Union office, and she's like, "Hello, everybody, hello, hello." And she's very sweet and nice. And then she turns into this, when she's not that person, she's turning into this sort of Jean Harlow character. And I wondered, is that Blondie, the real Blondie, and the sweet Blondie is fake, or is the sweet Blondie real, and the other Blondie is that girl believing she's in a Jean Harlow movie? You know,
I
with
think
the
that's
gun,
it.
with the gun and the cigarettes and the chomping the gum. Look at me, I'm Jean Harlow.
Yeah, she was taking on the Jean Harlow persona, maybe just to get her through this kidnapping thing, to have
Yeah.
the guts to do it. But she was portraying this character like a wise talking. When I watched the Hold Your Man film, and I watched another one that she was in called Red Dust.
That's a great one. That's one of
And
my favorite movies.
yeah, that was actually better than Hold That Man, but Red Dust was really good, and it had a very similar kind of ending where, what was the actress? I can't remember the actress.
Mary Astor.
Mary Astor, who's kind of the prim and proper upper crust woman who
Maybe it
then
was your favorite film after all, Michael.
Who,
You
uh,
popping out those
I've seen
names.
Red Dust easily 25 times.
and
Wow.
she pulls out a pistol and shoots Clark Gable, to give away the ending on that one. There's a spoiler, but it was just so out of character, similar to what happens in this Kansas City film when the upper crust wife, prim and proper, turns mean. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Red Dust, definitely check it out. It's
Yeah.
top 10 gold, 1930s movies.
Well, Kansas City was a very like Sin City, Sodom and Gomorrah. There were clubs there that had naked waiters and waitresses just everywhere, and it was like, I believe Prohibition was rejected by Kansas City. It was one of the few places where you could get alcohol all the way through Prohibition. In fact, who was that woman that used to come and break up bars and stuff in Prohibition time? I want to say
Carrie Nation.
Carrie Nation. She came to Kansas City trying to break, and she was kicked out on her heels, and wouldn't happen. So Kansas City was thought of as the, I think something like the Paris of the West. It's like anything goes, a good time all the time, and
Well,
it was
authentic.
a wild city, pretty wild.
And it was one of the sort of jazz towns too, where jazz originated.
Yeah. This certain kind of jazz took off there.
And so jazz, to me, this whole idea of this improvisational, in the moment kind of form of music, where you have some structure, but then after that it's just all wild at times, but it comes to some kind of form at the end, right? That is appreciated, and it's demonstrably wonderful. I think that's the American experience, but we like to pretend that it's more structured and more orderly than it really is. But the reality is that it's gritty and it's dirty and it's filthy, and it's more like jazz, where the different influences come in and they leave, right? Depending on what's happening.
That's great.
And this is perfect. This is a perfect image to tell us who these people are, right?
Yeah.
You've got at the time, right? You have an African American woman acting as the housekeeper. She's young, and you got these dogs appearing like they have these diamond-studded bracelets or collars on, right? Free reign of the house, just whatever. It's the abject opulence or wealth established in these first few shots, and then contrasting with Blondie, who's obviously not comfortable in that kind of environment, right? It's really interesting.
Robert Altman's films generally have this very, I want to say, kind of a looser camera style, where he's famous for using the zoom lens quite a lot. And on this film, he really plays it more straight cinematographically. He's sort of like, it's shots, it's normal shots and cutaways and POVs and that kind of thing, which is not really the Robert Altman style that he's sort of became famous for. Is kind of, multi-camera, multi-characters all talking at the same time, that whole kind of ensemble thing. But
yeah, I thought it was not in a good way. Not in a bad way or good way, but I just thought it was very out of character for a Robert Altman film.
Yeah, it's got your basic, shot, reverse shot kind of things, and which is
standard filmmaking kit, right? That's
just
part of it.
And there's the character of Blondie, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh.
I'm a huge Jennifer Jason Leigh fan, but at a certain point in her career, she started going a different way with her acting style. It was a little difficult to watch, although I like Jennifer Jason Leigh, so it's like, okay.
But to be honest, going back and watching some of the Jean Harlow films, her character is a bit hard to watch. It's like it's a dated performance, and her attitude in the films Red Dust and Hold That Man or Hold Your Man were kind of like a bit like off-putting, or
that's if going back to saying that here she in her character is playing Jean Harlow.
Yes,
it would have been great to see her character playing the woman who Blondie really is more. You only saw a glimpse of it when she was like, I only remember seeing a glimpse of it when she was walking through the Western Union office saying hello to everybody. If there had been more of that, you could then look at this and go, oh, I see what she's doing. I see what the actress as the character, I understand what she's doing.
Yeah.
She's playing a woman who thinks is pretending she's in a Jean Harlow movie.
Right.
And I think if we had seen her character being normal,
right,
I think it would have played better. This part of her character would have played better.
I mean, I know we saw her earlier as she comes in, she looks awkward and out of place. And, it's really a tense moment between her and the housekeeper. But this is the moment when you see her teeth.
Yeah.
Her teeth are a shambles. They are terrible.
I noticed that.
You wonder I wonder anyway, from a directorial kind of perspective, what is the significance of that contrast in the image? Here she's done up makeup wise on the outside, right? She looks not bad, right? And yet she's got these rotting teeth on the inside, and you see them whenever she smiles or talks, or what is the symbolism of that, if you will?
I felt like it was Altman's way of saying, this is not a Hollywood film, it's a more gritty realism, because when do you put your lead female actress with horrible teeth? You don't do that, on the big screen. You better have those teeth looking really good, and so this was the way to kind of make it anti-Hollywood.
Okay. I see it as something more like you've got the glossy of what it should look like, and then you got the the reality of the stark icky right
yeah
beneath.
She's not a movie star.
I think
good Lord.
Exactly.
Look a little like Death Warmed Over.
And there was a lot of Royal Academy of Drama going on here in this performance too.
This scene was overdone for sure. But even this character, right, who's supposed to be prim and proper and exemplifying, right, the wife of a government official, a high government official, and she is cracked. She is out there, and we come to learn as we do, right, that she has a drug dependence. She's an addict, which to me was a nice stark reminder of because I went and I did some research about laudanum, and I found out that the opioid based product was popular and abused in the 30s. And I'm thinking, well, then why is this war on drugs such a new thing in American culture? It's been going on since the country was created, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Legalize this stuff. Let's get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you need a war on drugs so people don't think about the war on everything else.
Right.
Yeah, she was a fragile, broken bird, kind of a woman that who knew her husband was destined for great things, working in the FDR administration, or about to get that appointment. And she had to keep it together. And she was as protective of her husband in the, as Blondie was protective of her, low-level thug husband.
They were two contrasting characters. Blondie was portraying toughness, even though she herself was softer. She was portraying weakness, even though at the heart of who she was quite a hard nugget.
Right. Yeah. She, in that final scene, she's like a cold-blooded killer. It's like, whoa.
Which again speaks to, I think, this imagery of, what we think of as the way society works and the gritty reality of it.
Kind of a pulling back of the curtain on this, and it's done so quickly in a way. It's not really the main part of the story. It's the backdrop, which is
Right.
what I really found so amazing about Altman's direction. It's not a political thriller. It's
Right.
it's a kidnap film and the gangsters running around, but in the backdrop, there's this other whole, thing happening. It's almost more important than this front story,
Yeah, and jazz is the perfect counterbeat to all of that.
Yeah.
Right, that chaotic kind, seemingly just very, very dispersed, very wide character kind of. The stories that the characters have appeared kind of very scattered, but as the movie unfolds, you see they cross and they interconnect much more. And just like jazz, right, you get all these different rhythms and beats, and they kind of pull together and fall apart and come back together again. Don't you feel that there was also a subtle nod about the racial realities of America within the film?
Oh yeah.
Right.
I
And
mean,
in some cases, not even subtle. Some cases they were just like out and out saying it.
Well, definitely in the 30s, 1930s in Kansas City.
it's like there were two, governments, or two types of two realities. Yeah. Harry Belafonte really was amazing in this film. I thought he should have gotten an Academy Award for this. You think of Harry Belafonte as being a sweet, well-spoken guy, but he plays a rough talking dude in this movie.
Yeah.
And
he was great.
yeah, and apparently he wrote a lot of the dialogue for his character. That's what Robert Altman said in the director commentary. So,
there's, he's a nice counterbeat to Blondie, the actress who played Blondie. The way she, chewed the scenery in a lot of her moments. He understated a lot of what he was asked to do, right? So he played things a little more soft, not soft, a little more subtly. And that subtlety was if he played big and grandiose and, also chewed the scenery, it could really have gotten out of hand. This film would have gone completely into farce.
Right. No, I think this film it sort of vanished.
Yeah.
$20 million budget. It made $1 million.
It is one of those sort of unknown films or lesser known films within the Altman, pantheon.
Yeah.
To be honest, I found it tough to get through some of the language. And I know it was period appropriate, and it wasn't just used by a single group to denigrate another. It was utilized across the racial spectrum, right? But to my modern sensibilities, I found it really tough.
Well, we're talking about the N word, right? Is that what we're talking
Yeah,
about? But how do you do a film about the 1930s
yeah. I
without
know.
putting that word in the mouths of whoever might have said it,
No,
It's
I get it. It's a period piece, but
yeah.
I imagine that it might not have sat well with potential viewing audiences to be sitting in and having that word bandied about so much.
Pulp Fiction, it was rife throughout, but people seemed to go with it on that one.
True.
So Steve Buscemi plays sort of this low-level thug who's, I guess, mob connected. Maybe he is mob guy
Yeah.
that's orchestrating the vote.
Yeah, I think he did a good job. Again, he didn't do more than was asked of him. He didn't have to do anything more. His character was pretty straightforward, but he did find some soft moments.
Really?
He
I
could
don't
have
recall those.
I don't remember them.
he could have portrayed tough bully the entire time, but he found moments when he could play it a little more gently. One of them was when he was beating the man in the in the
Gently beating that guy
no
in
no
the
no
head
no,
with
no.
with a
He
crowbar.
beat the
Baseball
guy,
bat.
beat him, right? He beat
He
him.
used, instead of a baseball bat, he used a croquet mallet.
And then he looks up and he sees the woman in the car and he goes, "What are you looking at?" And then up pops, or he notices Blondie in the car, and he starts having just a conversational tone. "Blondie, what are you doing here?" And he gave just a different take on
I think that was more about how the violence is irrelevant to him.
well, yeah, but because he portrayed it that way, he had a nuance, or he had another level.
He definitely had
Which-
another level.
which
Yeah.
gave us a little bit more. We didn't dismiss the character because he was only one dimensional. He had a second dimension,
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
I think the
twist.
film, and I was thinking that the film was really about power, and
Mm.
every level of society, people are trying to get more power and increase their power. And Blondie, whether she's trying to keep her husband, I don't know if that's power, but she wants to keep her family together, her and her husband.
Was trying to exert what she thinks of as power
Yeah.
over others to get what she wants, right? And
Yeah.
that's the American experience, right? Whether you think American experience is about upper mobility,
Right.
And how you can live the American dream, but maybe it is about power and the way that you cultivate it. And maybe that's the point of these jazz scenes. It's about how you have all these people who are really good at what they're doing, playing their instrument, right? And it creates this wonder, and they're going all night.
Yeah.
They're going all night. And
Again, the battle of power between, again, the Coleman
Right.
Hawkins and the Lester Young, that was also a battle, played out in
And-
music.
and you've got the politician who's trying to control it, corrupt as they may be, but they're trying to control it from this surface, visually kind of, appearing progressive, appearing correct, appearing like they're the righteous. Meanwhile, you've got the underclass, the guy who's running this nightclub, who's like not trying to appear correct at all. He just wants to get what he can out of the situation. And
Yeah.
that's the grittier truth of the reality of it.
Yeah.
The thing is, he's appearing correct in his world.
Yes.
So he's doing, you screw him over, you're dead.
Right.
He's got to keep the reins on in everything. He's got to keep up his image, but his image is different because he's in a different world. I think his image is more true to himself
Mhm.
than say Michael Murphy
Michael Murphy.
or Mrs. Murphy. But it's an image that he has to maintain.
You're right. In the world that they live, he reacts honestly. And it's the people that are trying to be something other than honest about who they are. They
Right.
seem to be getting the short end of the deal.
What did we think of the editing that Altman used primarily at the beginning of the film when he was he started the film at the kidnapping portion, but then he cuts back to the robbery and what motivated the kidnapping. You know what I mean? He did this
Yeah.
sort of flash forward, flash backward kind of jump cutting in time, which was clever.
Yeah, I think if you want to start with Blondie, which is the point of the point of the movie, you got to start there. I think the opening is a great opening where you think where you're starting on the star of the movie, in a sense, the star of the story. This sort of intriguing opening where what is she? She's a manicurist, but something else is going on? What's happening? And
The drug mule. Which,
yeah, you realize she might be a drug mule, and then that's such a great way to start the movie that you're sort of not forced, but it's inevitable. You have to then go back and show. You sort of have to then work your way backwards, because I think if you started with Dermot Mulroney and the guy robbing the guy, it's a way to start, but I don't think it's as intriguing as this way.
could an argument be made that that was much more of a jazzistic way of doing the film, where you have kind of it appears to be disjointed, but really there's a greater rhythm or a bigger kind of flow or like a connectivity of it all. I'm not sure what the language would be.
I don't know. I hadn't thought of that, but that's an interesting idea. The jazz inspired kind of mix up, mash up. But I think Michael's kind of right in the sense the starting it off this way with Blondie, you don't know who she is. She pulls out a gun, you're being kidnapped. That whole kind of it hooks you onto the rest of the story. But then the flashbacks, fill in the gaps, like why? And then they flash forward again, they flash back. They did that for at least for the first half of the film. It seemed like first third were these flashback kind of things, which
it's almost an argument can be made as well. The film really contrasts the two women's experiences and how they are both caught up in the world of the men, right, that they are partnered with. Yeah. And how they have to interact or how they have to navigate the consequences of their partner's actions. While Blondie plays the tough girl, the wife turns out to be the tough girl.
She doesn't know what tough is. She's met her match, that's for sure,
Yeah.
And she's pretty calculating all along. She's in a drug stupor and out of her mind for a lot of the film, but then there are points when she kind of gets this lucidity and you can see who she really is, as you were saying.
The ending with Johnny O'Hara when he comes in with his guts spilling out. I realized that Seldom Heard probably had his guys, because the last thing he says is, "What's the name of that doctor we always use?" So sort of knowing they could get a doctor who would do enough to him that he's not going to die, but right away. And so he comes into the house with his guts spilling out. But then at the same time, the Michael Murphy's character sort of is there as well with some white gangsters. And I didn't quite understand how they all linked together.
That there was going to be a consequence from both sides of this problem.
But they weren't coordinated, right?
No. I don't think so. I just saw it as like Johnny came home and he's screwed up, man. He's messed up.
So no matter what happens, there's going to be
no matter what. Blondie and her husband were going to get screwed over, right, from both sides of the power base.
Right.
Stop sharing. Why don't we just say Robert Altman's Kansas City? Incredible film. For me, I thought it was an incredible mixture of history and music and performance. Some of the performances may be flawed and in some viewers' eyes, maybe over the top. But it's one of the films that I think requires multiple viewings to really dig under the skin of what's going on.
Right.
What are your final thoughts, guys?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was slow paced. I loved the atmosphere. I loved I loved the acting. I just some Jennifer Jason Leigh just I think has gone down a path. But basically, if you were saying that Robert Altman told her to do that, then okay. But to be honest, I thought Cotton Club was the same story told a lot better. And I know they're totally two different directors, but I think Robert Altman was stepping into Francis Coppola's territory with this movie, trying to do a straighter style of, it happens to be a gangster movie, but it's sort of a straighter style. But I thought all through this, when I was watching, I was going, boy, it made me want to watch Cotton Club again. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite Robert Altman movie. In fact, I wouldn't even put it on my list of Robert Altman movies that I would watch, but I liked watching it.
To use the baseball imagery that we've used in the past, right? I would say this was a batter who swung hard at the ball, and he got greedy. He rounded second. He was trying to go to third. He got popped on the way, right? For me, it's like a 2 wanting to be a 3. What I really didn't understand as I was watching it was the use of jazz and how that was telling the story. But as I was thinking about it afterwards, I realized that it was kind of like the same story just being told in the jazz. I thought that was creative, but it seemed discordant, as some jazz can sometimes be. Right. And if you're new to jazz, or you don't have an appreciation for it, it can seem almost muddled and too much going on. And I think the film has some of that. There's too much going on. There's not enough, as I think, Michael, you said at the beginning, you wished you had been able to get a little more information about some of the stuff that was happening, right? About the jazz musicians.
Right.
So it's almost like they could have refined a few things and made the film a little bit easier to palate, easier to sample or to enjoy. But because it was just too discordant for me, I found it, it was fine. Jennifer Jason Leigh, she absolutely was chewing the scenery way too much, and there wasn't enough subtlety there. I mean, I would have liked to see Steve Buscemi as that character in the entire film versus her. I think he would have done a far better job of that kind of character.
Oh yeah.
Right. But 1996, I don't think anyone is really ready to see Steve Buscemi in drag.
He'd look good in that dress at the end, though.
He would have. I mean, he would have carried it off.
Yes, Robert Altman's perhaps deceptively challenging film, I would say. Maybe not 100% a home run. I'd give it a triple, but maybe that's generous. But I think I enjoyed the music, and I enjoyed the history that he combined into this story, and I thought it was certainly a worthy film to watch within of Robert Altman's filmography. Anyway, a Robert Altman film with well worth watching and discussing. Lots going on there and to look at and consider. Thank you, followers of film, for watching us. Appreciate it. Signing out.